Welcome to Active Living at the Active Life. I'm Dan Wooten, the host of a monthly show featuring activities and programs for adults 55 plus. Today's show, we're going to be interviewing 4 members of the Active Life that have served our country in the military. And I think you'll be interested to meet them and find out about their story. So stay tuned for a great show. Welcome to Active Living at the Active Life. I'm Dan Wooten, and we have a monthly show that we provide for older adults in Troup County. And this morning we are filming live at the Active Life in LaGrange on Facebook and in front of an audience. So Facebook Live people, welcome, and also welcome audience. Wave at each other. Like to welcome now Scoot Johnson. He is a member of the Active Life. Welcome, Scoot. Glad to have you here. We'll learn a little bit about your service to our country. Tell us about what branch of the military did you serve?
I was in the U.S. Army. I went in to start my duty. It was in December of '67. I was, after the infantry training, I was stationed at Fort Myers, Virginia, Old Guard, and got an opportunity to participate in a lot of honoring services. I think all of it was honor in the veterans there, because we had burials regular, because this was in '68, '69. I got to participate in Eisenhower's funeral. We was cordoned off the rotunda up there.
Wow, that is amazing.
And got to participate in the President Nixon's inauguration.
Wow. And
just honoring the whole thing in my heart and mind. Honoring.
Well, let's talk about those 2 events, the Eisenhower funeral. Tell us, what role did you play in that special?
Well, when his was laying in state in the rotunda, our unit cordoned it. We had troops all the way around the thing, and that was one of them things we had. You had summer clothes and winter clothes, and they told us to get summer clothes out and press them up. So we had summer blues out, was going to wear a big overcoat. When you got down there, they said, well, things has changed. You leave your overcoat on the bus, and it was snowing and wind blowing, and it was pretty cool out there, but we stayed out there about 3 hours at parade rest outside. So
he was lying in state, and so people would come into the Capitol rotunda to see him. Okay. And so I bet you look sharp in your uniform.
Well, you almost had to be.
Did you have a picture from that event that you took?
I've got an album at home. I was going to bring it, but I forgot it. But it had pictures of all the things that we did, because they would put on programs, summertime programs, wintertime programs, but it was all about the military from day one to the present day. At that time was at '69.
Well, let's now look at the inauguration that you had a chance to participate in. What year was that? Was that in '72?
No, this was in '60.
Oh, the first
Nixon's first inauguration.
Okay.
And we got a lot of marching in. Of course, that was one of the things we did, was march, and that we got a lot of practice in for that time for the honor of the president. Now,
did you get to meet the president or see him from a distance? How far were you stationed from where the swearing in ceremony?
Well, on several occasions we'd get, when they was having Distinguished Cross, we had to go to the White House, and they'd have them ceremonies in back of the White House up there. So we got to participate in a couple of those. Medal of Honor is what I'm talking about.
Yes. So looking back, from a perspective today, what do you value about your time in the military when you served in the Army? What lessons did you learn? What does it mean to you today?
Well, always a love of country and God, and that's part of it, you know, to look after the country and protect it best you can, because I hope that everybody loves the country and wants to do what the Lord wants us to do in it.
That's great. That's great. Were you married during that time?
I got married after AIT training, the second phase of infantry training, and we've been married a little over 50 years now.
Wow, that's amazing. That's awesome. Was it difficult to move away from home when you started in the military? Had you lived away from home before?
Never had. Never had, but that was an eye-opener for a young person, you know, never had been away from home. But my brother had been in, he'd served for 6 years, and I said, well, you know, it's my time to do it too.
Well, that's wonderful. Scoot, thank you so much for your service to our country. We appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Glad to do it.
God bless you. We're going to, let's give him a round of applause. Thank you for your service. We're excited now to have Pat Howard joining us. And Pat's a member also of the Active Life. Pat, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
And we'll learn a little bit about your military service. You have a shirt on that's giving it away, but you served in which branch of the military?
The United States Navy.
Awesome. And what years did you serve?
I was active duty for 2 years and then reserves for 19.
Oh,
yeah. I retired in the reserves.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, what years did you serve in active duty?
From 1976 to 1977.
Okay.
No, 1975 to 77.
Okay,
Yes.
75 to 77. And
Yes.
what was your experience like in the Navy? What role did you play?
I
in service
was
of our
an
country?
aerographer's mate, which is affectionately called a weather guesser. I was in
Okay.
meteorology.
Oh.
Yes, I was a forecaster. I helped pilots navigate through the weather.
Okay.
I was on the air side. I wasn't on a ship. I was at an air station. So, really enjoyed doing that.
And so what was your typical day like in that role?
Well, going out and looking up at the clouds and trying to, take observations, and then bringing the information back inside and putting it in a computer, and then the computer puts it on maps, and then you plot the maps and let the pilots know where they're going to run into stuff.
Now, was that before Doppler radar, and did you have that as a tool that y'all utilized?
We did
Okay.
in the reserves.
Okay.
On
Later.
active
Okay.
duty, because I was
stationed
stationed in Bermuda, so it was kind of behind the times.
Wow,
a little bit.
Bermuda. That is a beautiful country.
It was. It
How
was
long were you
very nice.
stationed there?
Well, just the 2 years I was
Okay.
active. Yeah,
But you were
that's
there.
where I met my husband.
Oh, okay.
And we've been married now for 42 years.
Wonderful. That is awesome. Let's give her a hand. That's great. Two long marriages. Now, tell us a little bit about, experiences that you had while serving in the Navy.
As far as in the reserves, because
Okay.
that was only 1 weekend a month, and then
Okay.
2 weeks during the year, I would go on active duty. Did an awful lot of traveling, but during that time had children and all of the stuff that goes along with that. So it was like having a vacation every year for 2 weeks, because Jim would get to stay with the kids, and I would go off, and I would go to like San Diego, Hawaii,
Hawaii.
just all over. I mean, I did a lot of traveling, but would have been better with him.
Yes.
But I took what I got.
So
it was very
19
interesting.
years you continued to serve in the reserve?
I did, yes.
Wow.
And that was at Belle Chase in New Orleans. So.
And so they would, you say 1 weekend a month?
1 weekend a month, I would
Okay.
go to the base in New Orleans at Belle Chase and do my weather thing. And then 2 weeks out of the year, I'd go to somewhere away.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what were the ages of your children?
Well, when I retired, it was in 1996, so they were all teenagers, and one was out of high school and the other two soon after that. So through the whole time, they had to put up with one or the other of us being gone 2 weeks a year, so, and then 1 week in a month.
Okay.
So it was a lot of scheduling and getting through things, but
Thank you. Thank
it
you
worked out.
very much for that. Looking back now on your time of serving our country, what does that mean to you now? And your perspective of that service and that time that you devoted to our country?
Well, I have a much greater respect for the freedoms that we have, only in that if anyone who's not ever been in the military knew what they truly do and sacrifice, they would probably appreciate it a lot more. So I have a much greater appreciation for the United States. So.
Well, again, thank you for your service of our country.
Certainly.
We do appreciate all that you and others that serve have done to buy freedom, to fight for freedom and keep freedom, and we appreciate that very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, we are pleased now to have joining with us Horace Thomas. And Horace Thomas served our country a little bit earlier in World War II. Is that right, Horace?
That's right.
Tell us the years that you served our country.
The years of 1943 and 1944.
Wow, that is amazing.
The draft was on, and they drafted us, and we had to register when you was 18, between 18 and 39, and then they called us to, I got a thing in the mail said, "Greetings, report to Fort McPherson in Atlanta."
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what did it feel like when you got that letter?
I don't know. I had been working in Callaway Mill Company.
Okay.
When we come from Carroll County down here, and it was, I can't explain it. It didn't bother me too much, though.
Okay. So that is amazing. So this was in the midst of World War II. And so tell us a little bit about what branch of the service were you drafted into?
Let's see if my memory will come to. We took my training over here at Macon, and then they sent us up north to Maryland, and then they sent us back down and put us on the boat, and away we was going across the Atlantic Ocean.
Wow.
And we all thought we was going to England. But all the other boats, where it did go, when we got out there, the boat I owned made a right turn and went south down there to the Rock of Gibraltar and went into the Mediterranean Sea.
Okay.
And we got to, if I can't remember, the hospital in Naples, Italy. We went in there and they unloaded us and went back in the mountains where their volcano was and took 2 more weeks of basic training and then come back to the hospital where the boat was, and then we went up to Mediterranean Sea in the boat and got up there at I did know we unloaded and went in at I forget what, Anzio.
Oh, okay.
Went in at Anzio, unloaded out in the boat, and come on shore and on the little old boats.
Okay.
And I lasted up there 2 weeks on the front line. Went through Rome.
Wow.
And
Went
then,
through Rome, Italy.
And then that's when I lasted up there 2 weeks.
Wow.
And then I got hit with shrapnel from 88. They was shooting them over the hills at us.
That is amazing. So you were fighting, and you had shrapnel from a bomb or a hand grenade.
I got my
Yeah, I got your hand.
hand knocked. All of my fingers knocked off of them except this one.
Wow. That is
But
amazing.
then when I got out, come back to LaGrange. Went back to work for Callaway Mills Company.
That is. So you were, how long were you in the station there? You said you had training and all, so were you in the Mediterranean area for about a month total? or-
Weeks in the Mediterranean.
Okay.
Here, we had a little bit. Yeah, my training was over at Maker, and
Okay.
I can't think of the name of I had it on my end of my tongue this morning over there, but it's no longer the camp. I forgot it was
Okay. That's all right. So what was it like coming back to the United States after being gone and fighting in World War II?
Can't hardly say about that. I just felt just like I was always felt, I guess.
Yeah. Was it good to come home and good to see family after being separated and going through what you went through?
It was good.
Okay.
And to see my son, see, he was a year old, and then he was a baby when I left. I went up there, and when I was sworn in at Fort McPherson, Vestal was born the next day. And I had an 8-day Chilean route to get to Maryland to get on the boat.
Wow.
And that's all I got to see him till I come back. And he was a year old then when I come back.
Boy, that is amazing. Well, thank you, Horace, for your service to our country and your bravery. All right. Well, our final guest today is Jim Howard, and good to have you here, Jim. Thank you for joining us. And we heard a little bit about your story already from your wife, Pat, who was here. You served in the Navy?
Right.
And what years did you serve our country?
From 71 to 76 on active duty, and then the active reserves through 93. So I got 4 years active and about 19 years reserves.
Okay.
About a total of 22 years.
And tell us about your active duty. Where were you stationed during the time? We know that you ended up in Bermuda and met a cutie that you married.
Yeah. I did my initial training in Pensacola and got commissioned. Okay. And then from there I went to Corpus Christi for advanced navigation school. And then from there I went to my active duty station at Patuxent River, Maryland, where we're in C-130s. It's a communication squadron. And we spent our time going back and forth across the Atlantic, visiting hot spots like Keflavik, Iceland, lodges, the Azores, Portugal, Spain, Germany, Sigonella, Sicily, a lot of time in England. And our final destination coming back off of deployment was Bermuda, where we had a maintenance detachment where they did some fine tuning and some maintenance work on the planes before we returned to Pax River. So,
And what was your role? What position or jobs did you hold when you served in active duty?
well, on the aircraft, I was a navigation officer, just plotting the courses and using all kinds of navigation instruments, the old sextant, shooting the sun and the moon, the stars for navigation, and that was a lot of fun, especially in bad weather. You're just hanging off that sextant, just swinging back and forth. It was a lot of fun, but we like I say, we spent a lot of time over the Atlantic doing our missions, but I enjoyed every bit of it, especially my last couple of months on active duty. I spent as officer in charge of our maintenance detachment. I think I lost my microphone.
Just keep on talking.
But I was in charge of that, and that's where I met Pat. She used to give us weather briefings and everything, but when I spent the time as officer in charge, it was kind of funny, but it was interesting. She played on the softball team for the Navy, and she broke her foot playing the softball, and I picked her up, carried her up into the stands and on to the infirmary, and they put a cast on her foot, and then I took her back to her barracks and carried her up 3 flights of stairs, and en route I tripped and twisted my ankle. So when I got her to her room, I left and went to the dispensary, and I got a cast put on my leg, same leg.
No.
So we hobbled around in Bermuda for 6 weeks with casts on our legs. And then, like I said, we met in December of 75, and we were married in July of 76.
Okay.
So we've been married, like you said, 42 years.
That is amazing. What a story. Matching cast.
Yep, they were matching. Every time we got them autographed, everybody autographed them in the same place.
Oh, that's
So
good.
they matched all the way.
Oh, wow. Well, you were being a hero, though, carrying her.
Well, I tried. I couldn't do it today, but I was a little bit younger then.
Okay. Wow. All right, well, looking at your experience in the military, both in active duty and in the reserves, what observations have you made looking back now as in maturity and looking back of what does your service mean to you?
Well, it's given me a lot more respect for anyone in uniform. I mean, I learned to take orders, I learned to give orders, and just follow orders. I learned a lot of discipline, and to me, anyone who's willing to serve and has the opportunity to serve in the military should give it a shot, because it develops your maturity and it gives you a higher respect for our country.
Well, we thank you very much for your service and for your dedication to our country. We appreciate that, and thank you for taking time to talk with us today.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank the Facebook Live group out there watching us. Thank you for joining us today. And if you haven't ever been by the Active Life, we welcome you to come by and see what we have to offer. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.